Hey, everybody, welcome to Cavs Insider, our pregame coverage here. Game 2, the New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Getting ready for, frankly, a huge game for the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have certainly been good in Game 2 in recent past. But after dropping Game 1, man, they really need to be solid here tonight. Brendan Gulick at home. Spencer German's on site. Spence, I know Coach Bickerstaff just kind of wrapped up. Why don't you tell us what JB had to say about tonight's game before we insert our own thoughts?
Yeah, had some good stuff to say, sort of getting ready for game 2 here. Obviously, there was a question about physicality, and I know that's been a topic of conversation really the last 3 days, something that I think fans and the team has sort of been chewing on. That's kind of the beauty of these NBA playoffs. You get several days to kind of think about what went wrong, what you need to work on. And, you know, he made it clear that he thinks there's certainly an element to being more physical, and he wants to see how the team responds coming out tonight. Out of the gate, especially given that they played a bad first quarter, obviously, as we know, in Game 1. So I think that would be something to keep an eye on. Another thing that that kind of caught my attention, and again, we talk about players and impact and guys outside of Donovan Mitchell that are going to have to step up. And Evan Mobley is obviously one of those guys. And he talked about how in Game 1 he didn't have a problem with what Evan Mobley was doing. He was doing a lot of the normal stuff that he does. The shots just weren't falling, and I think that kind of is sort of poetic to the game of basketball as a whole. It's just sometimes you do what you normally do, and you're getting to your spots and you're taking the right shots, and it's just not falling for you. So I'm definitely curious to see how the team comes out tonight. I'm also curious. Didn't talk too much about this pregame with JB, but I'm curious to see what the rotation looks like beyond the starting 5 tonight. We know Dean Wade was kind of the first guy off the bench the other night, and people were sort of perplexed by that. So we'll see if there's any changes with the rotation beyond the starting 5.
Yeah, look, Mobley, I mean, he's obviously had a great body of work throughout the year.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't have any issue either with his shot selection and the way he played, but you need more than 8 points and 13 shots. I mean, he was 4 of 13 from the floor. That's certainly not going to get it done. And look, I mean, I tend to like the grittiness, the toughness of this team. They won, 51 games this year, and you don't win 50 games or more without getting punched in the mouth a few times and finding out that you can handle some adversity. So I do expect them to play better tonight. But I think that when you kind of look at these two rosters, I expect the Cavs to play well because I think the top end of Cleveland's roster is better than the top end of the Knicks roster. But it was what New York did deeper in the roster where they well outpaced the Cavs. I thought that was a huge concern in Game 1.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And the adversity point's huge. You know, JB talked about that pregame as well. And it's I think what's interesting with this team is that's kind of been their story all year, right? Like there's been some games where you look and we're like, man, like this team should be better than this. And they maybe have a bad first half or a bad quarter and it costs them a game. And then they come back out the next game against that team or against the next team they play, and they seem to sort of respond to it. So we're going to get, I think, tonight is going to be a real testament to who this team is and what this team is and how close they are to really being a title contender. I think we all kind of agree maybe this isn't the year they're going to go win a championship, but how close they are to reaching that plateau. Just because, again, if you go down, if you fall down 0-2, maybe we're sitting here post-game doing another one of these videos talking about, okay, this team clearly just isn't ready for that spotlight. But if they come out and, like JB alluded to, if they throw the first punch and they are a little bit more aggressive, I think that certainly speaks to what this team's been all year and that they're sort of just sticking with what they've done all season and responding the way that they do. And then we kind of carry on from here with the series, hopefully evened up at 1 apiece. You bring up, just the lineups and the matchups. And I think you're right. Like starting 5, I think the Cavs have a better group. And we sort of saw the bench played a huge difference in Game 1, which is interesting because I'm a big time, benches don't matter as much in the playoffs truther because you're normally you're playing your starters a lot more. And it's the old saying of, you play 7 and trust 6 type thing. And that didn't really come to fruition in Game 1. The bench really did matter in that one. So I'm curious to see, again, how that rotation kind of plays out, but also just the effort because offensive rebounds, I mean, I was ripping my hair out watching Game 1, seeing how many times they just got out hustled for rebounds. And I get that there's some skill to it and there's certain guys in this league who are better at it than others, but a lot of times it is about effort. And we got to see a better job out of those guys tonight if the Cavs are going to have a chance to sort of get an advantage on that specific statistical category.
I don't have the exact box score in front of me, but if I remember correctly, game one, I think the Knicks missed like 25 shots in the second half, and I think they had 11 offensive rebounds. So if you're
you're right.
A second look on literally basically half of your misses, at the end of the game when you're trying to add things up and you're looking for those little magnified points, that's obviously a glaring problem.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fault Darius Garland too much or Isaac Okoro too much for the way they played first playoff games, and I thought they were okay, but I also think there's something to be said for, there's a little bit of those, like, not necessarily nerves, but just some of that like anxious, nervous energy that you're feeling, and you're trying to get yourself settled in what is a bigger moment. And when the Knicks came out and frankly bullied the Cavs the way that they did, I thought Cleveland showed great poise with a big comeback there in the second half to actually take the lead late. And ultimately, they lost it. But I felt like that was maybe a really good thing for Garland and Mobley and Okoro. Dean Wade hasn't played in a playoff game until, this past Saturday either. You never want to see your team lose, but sometimes you gotta build up a little scar tissue.
Yeah, we hit on, I guess, some of the negatives from game one and how that could be almost a doomsday scenario. You got out rebounded, they out physicaled you, those types of things. I think the positive you take away from that game as you get ready for game two tonight is, to your point, Brendan, like you were down double digits and you fought back in that game and you only lost. It was a 4-point game in the end. Like, you played some of your worst basketball of the season, certainly bad from by playoff standards, and you still gave yourself a chance there at the end, largely because you have a guy like Donovan Mitchell who can take over late and kind of will you to that situation and put you in a position to potentially win. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, I think the Cavs obviously have the best player on the court altogether, and that's going to obviously keep you in a lot of games. But the way that they responded, as they've done all season, as we kind of talked about, I think speaks to what we'll see from this group tonight. It's a big one. We know pressure's on. You can't go down 0-2. It'll also be interesting, Brendan, one other note here. I know we don't want to take too much time here pregame, but I know Josh Hart was doubtful coming into today, and I think he's now questionable leading up to first tip here. So depending on how some things are going out on the floor behind me, we'll see if he's in the starting lineup or not in the starting lineup, but if he's coming off the bench for this team once we tip off.
In the last couple of minutes, actually, Woj put out a note that said that it's likely he's going to play. So
okay.
I don't know what we're going to see from Josh Hart. Obviously, he rolled his ankle pretty good. Will he be in a more limited capacity, or is he, is this all smoke and mirrors? I guess we'll find out. But you're right. He played a critical role for New York on Saturday night. Donovan Mitchell, 38 points. That was obviously a game high and one of the better playoff performances of his career in game one. Hopefully we'll see something similar with a little extra help around him here tonight. And if you're looking for a little good mojo at home, since 2009 in game two of a playoff series, the Cavs are 16-5. So we'll see if they can get back and even this thing up at one game apiece here tonight. Spencer's at the arena. I'm at home, and we'll have plenty of coverage for you. CavsInsider.com. We'll also chat with you here post-game after you hear from JB Bickerstaff and the Cavs from the arena as well. So we'll see you post-game. Good luck to the Cavs tonight. Have fun watching the game, everybody.